on. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chiara Pieri, and I'm a solicitor at Wedderburn, and I'm also the president of the Scottish Young Lawyers Association. For those of you that just joined, if I could ask for everyone to keep their cameras off and your microphones on mute, just so that it's only the speakers that have their cameras and microphones on, so you can see and hear them clearly. You might also wish to select the focus or speaker view for your screen, meaning that you'll see our speakers more clearly. This session is also recorded and will be available on our website following the event. So the format of today's event is really in the form of a discussion with our panel. Please do feel free to ask questions as we go using the chat function, and we will just answer these as the discussion proceeds. So on behalf of the Scottish Young Lawyers Association, welcome and thank you all for joining us today. It is to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Pro Bono Week, and today's event focuses particularly on the future of pro bono in Scotland. I'm joined by Ryan Whelan, founder of the Aberdeen Law Project, founder of probonoskills.com, and he is an associate solicitor. I'm also joined by Rebecca Samaras, who is the director of pro bono and clinical legal education at the University of Edinburgh, and Jonathan Goodyear, who is the co-founder of probonoskills.com and is also past student director of the Aberdeen Law Project. So our speakers clearly have a vast experience in promoting access to justice and working closely with student law clinics across Scotland. I'm going to just pass each of our speakers to introduce themselves and tell us a bit more about their background and how they got into pro bono work. So I'll pass over to Ryan to start us off.
Thank you very much. Thank you first of all for having me today. Really appreciate it. In terms of who I am, what I do and how I got involved in pro bono, I am currently a senior associate with Gibson Dunn. Worked with them for 7-8 years now in London and Dubai. And my practice is primarily in international arbitration and litigation disputes, but I also maintain what I regard as a very healthy pro bono practice. And I've done that ever since I was a fourth year student at the University of Aberdeen when I founded the Aberdeen Law Project, because we didn't have a law clinic at that stage, and it seemed to me that students at the University of Aberdeen could make a real difference to those in the community that otherwise had no access to legal advice or representation. And since then, I've been involved in a variety of cases. I represented the family of Claire Morris against the man convicted of her murder, Malcolm Webster, in connection with a grave dispute. I have, with Professor Paisley of the University of Aberdeen, opposed a rather unpopular president of the United States before he became president of the United States, Donald Trump, in connection with the many golf course. And I've also done with Gibson Dunn, double use of Dunn there, that was interesting, the Gina Martin upskirting campaign more recently, which made the odious act of upskirting a specific criminal offence under the law of England and Wales. So that's it from me by way of brief introduction. Are we passing over to Rebecca?
And thank you very much. Just checking that I'm not on mute, which I'm not, thankfully. Thanks very much. Likewise, thank you everyone for inviting me along today. I have had a quick scoot around those who are attending and can see many who I know from either being a student or from being in practice, and it's brilliant to see everybody here today. I've told everybody, as they all know me very well, to try and keep this brief. I am the elder statesman on this panel, but briefly, I was a practicing solicitor. I was late to law. It was my second degree and my second life, as I call it. I came late to law, as I said, went into practice and went straight into practice as a litigation solicitor. I undertook all sorts of different civil litigation cases, but particularly with an emphasis on family law, child law, and education law. and specialised in those areas. How did I get involved in pro bono work? I was really lucky, actually, because my first law firm had a partner whom I worked under, and he was already doing some pro bono work without us letting the senior partner know that we were doing that. So we used to go off and do lots of different bits and pieces ourselves, and it was always a case of hush, hush, don't tell the senior partner. I can say that now because unfortunately the senior partner is no longer with us. But how I really got involved other than that was through Edinburgh's Free Legal Advice Centre, which is one of the law clinics in Scotland. And I was a supervising solicitor from there. And that was from 2007 onwards. And each week I'd go along as a supervising solicitor and provide pro bono advice and assistance along with the law students. What I do now, I left practice and I have what I would probably call an enviable job. And it is an enviable job because I get to do pro bono every day in my job. That's what my job is. I run a law clinic, I develop law clinics, I encourage students and our alumni and yourselves to get involved in doing pro bono work and access to justice issues. My latest roles, I have a few hats and I'll finish on these. I'm delighted, and I'm sure we will touch on this, to be patron of one of the patrons in Scotland for probonoskills.com, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm also a trustee for the Access to Justice Foundation, which is a UK-wide foundation, which all for the benefit of those without needs, and we do lots and lots of fundraising for those. Some of you might have taken part in the legal walks and other areas that we do. I'm also a trustee of something called the Clinical Legal Education Organisation, and that is the educational side of doing pro bono, let's put it that way. So it's explaining and teaching students about skills and so on. I'll leave it at that just now because that's the short version, and I'll hand over to Jonathan.
Thanks very much. Likewise, thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. It's a privilege to be invited, and I'm looking forward to it. My resume is rather less interesting than Ryan and Rebecca's, I think, so mine will be necessarily short. But I'm a diploma student at Aberdeen. I am a past student director at the Aberdeen Law Project, and that's something I got involved in during my first year at university. I think partly out of a desire to try and do something useful with my time, and partly because I wanted to develop my skills. And from then on, pro bono is something I've sort of been increasingly convinced is a really good use of my time and other students' time. So that sort of takes me to now. As of last year, I co-founded probonoskills.com with Ryan. That's primarily where my pro bono related energies are spent these days. But I also sit on the Aberdeen Law Project's advisory board and chip in wherever I can, kind of in a past student director capacity, just to advise to the extent that I can on anything. I won't say anything more than that because I can see one of the student directors on this call, so I don't want to say anything they may challenge. But I try and be useful. So yeah, that's my very short introduction there.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And thanks very much, Rebecca and Ryan as well. And to give everyone an idea of your background. So before we kind of get into the discussion, what I was going to do was just a very short poll just to understand who in the audience have undertaken pro bono work, whether they do that now or whether they've done so in the past. So I'm just going to, hopefully this works, I'm going to launch the poll just now, and if everyone could just vote on that when it flashes on your screen. Just a couple more people to vote. Well, we're up at nearly 90 out of 102 have voted. Can anyone, Rebecca, for example, can you see the results in front of you, or is it just the questions at the moment? Just the question?
Yeah.
Okay. We're at 92 out of 102, but I will end the poll there and let everyone see the results.
Wow.
So, a lot of people already undertake pro bono work, which is obviously great to see. There are some of us who haven't, and there are some who don't at the moment, but have in the past. That's super interesting. I'm delighted to see that there are so many people who do it already, which is great. I'm sure all the rest of the speakers will agree with me. That's a fantastic number. That was 61 out of 92 people who voted yes. So that's great. So I guess what my first question was just to understand why you all undertake pro bono work in the first place and what it means to you. Jonathan, you kind of touched on it just at the end there. So I'll pass over to you first just to expand on that slightly, but what was it that made you get involved with pro bono work to begin with?
I think probably a lot of law students and students in general on this call will be able to relate to turning up, you know, at university on your first day. You go to the Freshers' Fair, you want to get involved in something. That's sort of the mindset I went in with. I'd heard about the Aberdeen Law Project and I heard them speak at the Freshers' Fair, and I thought it sounded very interesting, and I thought that it sort of tied in, you know, with me wanting to try and do something a little bit more useful than join a drinking society or whatever. You know, not that there's anything wrong with that, but yeah, so I went along, listened to what they said, and I sort of found myself in a position where I thought, you know, is citizens' advice something I'm interested in? Is something like the Aberdeen Law Project something I might be more interested in? And I went with ALP in the end, and I think I learned kind of very quickly by doing how much difference you can make for people. And I suppose this is kind of a slightly retrospective one, but I think having been part of it has really sort of made clear how useful the skills you kind of develop as a law student and probably just as a student in general really can really help. So it's kind of, you know, to begin with, I think I wish I could kind of come up with something a bit more noble than this, but realistically, I think I joined in part because I just wanted to meet people, in part because I wanted to develop my skills, and in part because I wanted to help people if I could. And I think I sort of chose to become increasingly more involved as my studies progressed, because it was clear there really was a lot of room to kind of to give back and to help. Yeah, so that's a slightly more expansive answer, but yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate the honesty of how it started out, but how it definitely developed. I'm sure you're not the only one. Ryan, I'll come to you next. Why did you get involved with pro bono?
So I think, long story short, I'm first in my family to go to university. I'm an inner city schoolboy. I'm proud of both. And I have been in communities where I know what it's like to be without a voice, to feel like society doesn't listen to you, to feel like injustices happen all around you, and that there's nothing you can do about it because you don't have money to instruct lawyers and you don't know any lawyers. And so I came to university with an appreciation of what what the knowledge I was gaining meant in practical terms. I always say to students when I speak to them through the Aberdeen Law Project or elsewhere, just by reason of being at law school, you're amongst some of the most intelligent people in the entire country. And starting from that point, you can make a real difference. Day one freshers, I believe, can make differences for a lot of people in communities, because all they need is someone to sit back, who's comfortable with a pen or, these days a keyboard, and is able to construct thoughts in a logical manner for them and to de-escalate things, look at it without emotion and be constructive. So that was probably my starting point, and that's where I ended up thinking about creating the Aberdeen Law Project. And that's not a task I did alone. I mean, I always get credit for being the founder, but you don't achieve anything like that on your own. There was over 100 students turned up to the meeting room of 10 that I had booked when I decided that this was maybe something we should run with. And then we had the generosity of staff who, on a similar basis to what Rebecca mentioned earlier with her law firm, said, we'll help you, but we need some deniability in the early stages just whilst we get this off the ground and figure out how we're going to do it. So I think what motivated me was a desire to help, to give back. But why I had that desire is probably because I understood what it's like to be those people that we face across the table. And to go to Jonathan's point, I've never seen it as mutually exclusive, joining a law clinic or a drinking society. And so I thought there was room in my life for both.
Thanks, Ryan. Rebecca, what about you? Why did you get involved with pro bono to begin with?
Okay, I'm going to wrap this into an example, a story, which is actually a truth. It's not a story, it's actually something that happened to me, which really, really has stuck with me throughout my life as a lawyer. And I mentioned earlier that, and for those of you who were on this last year, and I think I told some people this story, but I think it's a good story to tell. And I'm certainly, it still haunts me. The firm I mentioned that I worked for, we did a lot of legal aid work. I did legal aid as a trainee, I did a legal aid in practice, but we also did a lot of non-legal aid work, which, as we all know, you need to survive in a firm. And I was dealing with two cases at the same time. Both cases were personal injury actions. Both cases were to do with the same educational institution, where two separate incidents had taken place, where two separate clients, who were my clients, had been injured. One of my clients was paying for the service, for my services, for my firm's services. And we were dealing with the same insurers for both clients. The other client was a 17-year-old boy who was legally aided. And the legal aid was already difficult to get. But usually for advice and assistance, for those of you who do legal aid work, and indeed for those who do not, those of you who do legal aid work, you know how hard it is to get legal aid for anything and everything now. It wasn't as difficult then, but you could always get advice and assistance. Easy peasy. But as soon as you wanted to go further and get a full certificate for full legal aid, that's where things kicked in. My young client had lost an eye in this incident, and his future career in the army, which is what he wanted to do, that was that. The other person was adamant. She lost a finger, a small finger, in this incident, and her case was up and running. Boom. Insurers, I was dealing with the insurers on both sides. The insurers realized quite quickly that my young client was going to have difficulties running his case without legal aid. And at the time, Legal Aid Board came back and said, this is going to be a really difficult one because, you know, we don't know how this is going to work and it's going to cost a lot of money. And basically the insurers held out, and they knew this. And I had to be the person to go back to my client, my young 17-year-old client, and say, I'm really sorry, but my firm don't want to be involved in it. We just can't do this without some guarantees that we're going to basically make some money here or win the case. So he was sent away. My other client, who took it all the way, the insurers folded, and she got a hell of a really good payout, and quite rightly so. She deserved it. From that moment, I realized that there was a real injustice in what we do. And I saw that boy, a man, a couple of years later. I was traveling, I saw him, and he was sitting in a playground on a swing on his own. And I thought, well, you know, I don't know how his life would have developed. I don't know if that, you know, and I could have done any more than that. I knew if I'd got legal aid, I could have done more, but I wasn't allowed to. And that's haunted me. And that's the real reason I got involved in doing it. But also, finally, on that, I just believe it matters. And I say it matters. It matters as a phrase that's used more and more now when we're talking about legal aid. And it's used by everybody I know because it really does matter. And I just believe that we are protectors of the rule of law. And I don't feel I was able to protect that young man in that situation. So that's how I got involved in pro bono work, and I decided I was never going to do that again.
Well, I've never heard that story, Rebecca, and it definitely hits home and puts it into perspective, really, doesn't it? Because as you said, you literally had two clients in the same position. You could literally compare their positions right against each other, which really puts things into perspective. So we know that there's people on the call who already do pro bono, and we'll come on to those. But for those who aren't involved in pro bono work, what would your advice be, in kind of what's the best way to get involved with pro bono if it's not something that you do currently? And I will come to Ryan first this time.
I think the initial point to make is get involved. I mean, people get involved for all sorts of reasons. Some because they feel it matters, like we do. Others because they want to develop and refine their practical skills with a view to becoming a lawyer. I take no view on the reason, motivation for people getting involved. The thing that I just think is that they should get involved if they want to be a lawyer. As I say, it's a privilege to be a lawyer. You should give back. But the key is then to give of your best and do your best for those clients. Whatever your motivation for doing it is, these people need help. Their problems are, the values in contention are often small. But these cases matter as much, if not more, of some of the multi-million, multi-billion dollar disputes that happen in this world today. So I would say get involved. If you're not already involved, you're at university, there's an easy route. Most of the law universities now have law clinics. If your university doesn't have one, then create one. Aberdeen Law Projects in the past, we've always been very happy to give away our know-how on how to do that. We're not precious about it at all. People should just reach out and go from there. And what you find if you do something as bold as that is that there's a lot of people out there willing to help you, to give of your time, people that you would never have thought would have given you the time of day, never mind assistance. They do. When I started ALP, a number of silks at the Scottish Bar, I couldn't believe they returned my letter, never mind on favourable terms, and offered help. It was pretty miraculous, and a great advert for the Scottish legal profession, who I think generally do regard themselves, as Rebecca says, as defenders of the rule of law and minded to engage with and support pro bono. So I think advice from me is just take the first step. Show a willingness and then get involved and see where it takes you. I did not imagine I would do half the things that I've done pro bono wise. You just can't predict it, but get involved, give of your best. That's my advice.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I think it probably is easiest in a sense, when you're at university, if there is already a law clinic there, all you really need to do is sign up and get involved. Most universities do already have law clinics, but I'm sure everyone on the call will be super appreciative of your offer to help with the know-how of how setting one up if there isn't one available already. Jonathan, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I suppose I think I agree with everything Ryan said there. I think one thing perhaps to add is that I think people are apprehensive about getting involved. They think I don't necessarily have the skills, but as Ryan said, I think a fresher on day one can be useful. It's a real indictment in my mind against how the system works at the moment. But often what makes the difference is just having someone on hand to help somebody read through something complicated or set thoughts out, whatever. It doesn't tend to be groundbreaking stuff. It's often claims that might even just be in the 3-figure range, but if a client was to lose X or Y, that would be they would be £300, £400, £500, £600 sort of overdrawn. So it's I think it's all fairly small stuff, generally speaking, in the scheme of things, which perhaps means the barrier to getting involved is reasonably low if you just take that first step. Yeah, so I mean, very similar, but just don't be afraid to get involved, I think would be my main point.
Yeah, and there's usually mentors and supervisors and things, isn't there? So that shouldn't put people off. Rebecca, have you got anything to add to that? What would you say the best way to get involved is?
It depends where you are. I think I absolutely agree with Ryan and Jonathan. If you're already in university, get in touch with those who are running the law clinics. And again, as Ryan and Jonathan know, there is a network of law clinics, and every single one of us would be really happy to share that. We know there's a couple of universities that don't have law clinics, but please do, if you're thinking of that and you're on this call, get in touch with us. We'll do everything we can to help set that up or persuade your university to set that up. If you're already in practice, go and speak to your firm if they're not already involved. I know that many firms, certainly many of the larger firms already have a lot of pro bono work going on internally. But I think it's a case of just be interested, be curious, see. Also, don't be afraid to be honest and say, what's it, how will I benefit from this too? Because you will benefit from it. And it's, of course, if I get off my soapbox about the rule of law for a second, which I can't help, think of the skills that you're actually developing, even if you think you haven't got them. How many of you are in practice but don't see clients because of the area of law that you're practicing in, but you would like to be involved more? We have a number of solicitors, young solicitors, who come back to university and say, can I supervise cases? Because I don't get to see clients. I want to do that. I want to develop my skills. I want to develop my advocacy skills, my negotiation skills, my just interaction with other professionals as well, or interaction with each other. It's a great network. It's a great networking opportunity too, because you get to share your experiences with each other. So just echo everything that Ryan and Jonathan said, but just get involved, get in touch. There's always something you can do.
Yeah, I think probably a lot of the people on our call today probably are students who are already undertaking pro bono work at university. So I guess the question is, what do you do if you go to a firm and it's not someone who offers pro bono work? Now, Rebecca, you've already said quite a lot of firms already do in some way, shape or form, whether that's a day in citizens advice or something like that. But how would you say the best way to go about kind of getting it set up if you move to a firm, say you're a trainee or moving on to NQ, and you want to do pro bono work but your firm doesn't offer that already, what advice would you give to get it started?
There will be, this happens a lot. If you're in a smaller firm, let's already face it, especially if you are, you mentioned criminal there, they're already doing pro bono work. Let's face it, or everybody's doing more work than they're actually being paid for at the moment, and we'll always do that. We always do more than we're paid for. But that shouldn't stop you from thinking, how can we get involved? It doesn't have to be through a law clinic. It doesn't have to be through supervising cases, although that would be wonderful. Come and do that or get involved. It can be in different ways. You can do fundraising, you can write something, you can form a network. Lots of smaller firms just don't have the capacity to have social committees who can then work together on things. But there are organisations that you can contact. There are others who are crying out for some form of support, and it doesn't have to always be, and it doesn't have to be financial, it doesn't have to sometimes be with supervisory or provision. There are lots of different things you can do to help this gap that is getting bigger and bigger. Ryan is a great example of this, as is Jonathan. Ryan's always been involved with pro bono work, whether he was a student or even as a trainee in practice. And it's just something that you have to take that step and be proactive yourselves. But things always work better in partnership. That's the way I always look at it. One person's one, but if you add one person in, that's two people. Add another one in, that's three. It's all about collaboration, as far as I'm concerned. You actually get heard better. Get heard better. That's really good English, Rebecca. It is lunchtime. If you work together, and it may be there could be a little group of you with different firms. You all went to university together. You're all involved with each other. You're all still going out together. What is it you can all do collaboratively? If your own firm isn't as interested or able to do that. But there are always different routes. Come and talk to us. We can all, we can all find stuff for you to do. Don't you worry. The more the merrier, but that's the whole point. The more the merrier.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, I'll come to you as someone who's in practice. Perhaps you can give us some tips.
Sure. I'm pretty pragmatic about these things and optimistic about them. I think you generally should think about, who are you speaking to? So, if you're in a large corporate organization and you detect that the person you may be having to pitch to for permission to do something like this isn't naturally amenable to pro bono, then you need to think like they think. Then they're potentially quite corporate minded, quite business minded, and pro bono now is good business, in many respects. You look at the ESG, that's coming to the fore. You look at key clients, their pipelines. They want to see their supplier pipeline displaying and personifying the values that they as an organization believe in. And that can affect real change. So sometimes it's just about changing your vocabulary and your point of departure on the pitch. In the same way, it's a bit of advocacy, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
If you have a judge before you that, won't like a particular line of argument, then you're going to try and major on another one. You might not abandon that line of argument, but it may be relegated to a second or third tier provision. So, it's a great opportunity to practice your advocacy before you've even got to the pro bono client. So think about the decision maker, what's going to be driving their decisions, and try and pitch it at a level that they're going to be receptive to it. But what I'd say is, all the opportunities that you don't ask about will all pass you by. So if you ask the question, you may be pleasantly surprised about the answer that comes down the line. And in my experience in the firm I work for, we're an American firm, and our pro bono is quite significant. You're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of time if it were to be charged. You know, it's not something that is done lightly. It's done because, you know, we feel it matters, and we feel it matters for our communities. We feel it matters for our clients, you know, and it also matters for attracting and retaining the talent that we have, because, you know, it's a broad church. There's lawyers of all different political persuasions, but there is a commonality here, and that's, you know, it's a belief in society and helping those less fortunate and leveraging, you know, our influence and our skills for the better good. So, you know, big firms are on board with this, and pointing some firms to that are not doing it is always going to be good. It helps inspire. You know, look at what Clifford Chance are doing, look at what Freshfield are doing, look at what your Shepherd and Wedderburns, your Brodies, Pinsent Masons, CMS are doing. You know, they're all doing quite incredible corporate social responsibility programs that involve pro bono elements. So if your firm isn't, then start inspiring them. You know, they're missing a trick. And not least in terms of retaining you, because I'm sure if they're not aligned with your value set, then in time, you're probably going to move on. So it makes sense. But ask the question. As I say, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised in most instances.
Yeah, totally agree, Ryan. If they're not doing it already, then why not? And we, as in the people on this call, should be making sure that they are. So I'm going to move on now, just to focus more on the kind of future pro bono. Obviously, the past 2 years now, if we can call it, with COVID-19 especially impacting on the way things work in the legal sphere, you know, in courts, you know, the virtual world, etc. I guess a lot of pro bono work is done in person, and it might not necessarily be because of COVID, but what do you think the future of the pro bono landscape looks like, you know, in terms of what kind of pro bono work do we think that legal professionals will undertake kind of going forward? Does anyone want to take a lead with that one?
Do you mind if I just jump in on that, because that's actually very topical for me at the law clinic. COVID has had, for all of us, has had such a significant impact in every area of our lives. And just as you all had to start working from home, and many of you probably still are working from home, seeing clients in person was always the way that we ran our clinic at Edinburgh, and it was certainly the majority of the law clinics. And we quickly had to move things online in a way that we'd never done it before. And truthfully, I had never thought that offering online appointments was going to work in a way that it can do in person. You're never going to get that same relationship with a client per se. Well, that's how I used to think. So we started a virtual law clinic at the university, which ran in place of our in-person clinic, in the same way that all of your firms had to move everything online. And strangely, it worked really well. And I thought, why is that strange? But it does, it works really, really well. It works very well in certain ways, it doesn't work well in others. I think what you're going to see, and what is going to certainly happen at where I am, is we've restarted our in-person appointments. And that's going great again. And I think that is needed. We have lots of clients who don't have technology. We have lots of clients who don't know how to access our services except in person. However, for those clients who have mobility issues, who live remotely, who have care issues and so on, our virtual law clinic has been a tremendous success, and we're going to continue running that virtually in parallel with our in-person, when it comes to the court work and the court side, I think, obviously, I'm not going to get in a political argument here, but there are pros and cons to both. Criminal solicitors I've spoken to say that for criminal work, this is just, it's just not possible to continue working online. A lot of civil solicitors I've spoken to say, yes, we want to be back in court, but you know, for some things, it's okay to be online. I think you're going to see more and more hybrid methods of pro bono work being done. And I think there are pros and cons in that, but that is the way to go. And I think we all have to be creative in the way that we provide our services. But that said, it can't be to the detriment of those that we are serving and provide and who need the support. The sort of work that we're going to do, I'm going to leave it there and let Ryan and Jonathan go further on this if they'd like to. But the landscape's changed, and in the words of I was reading something that Richard Susskind had said. For those who know who Richard Susskind is, he's written lots of work on technology and legal technology and so on. There's a lot of references that say that this isn't a new norm that we're in. It's a new reality. This is actually the way it is now, and we're going to have to adapt and be flexible and be agile here in how we provide our services. And no more so than in pro bono delivery. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Rebecca. Jonathan, have you got any thoughts on that in terms of the future landscape? And I don't know if you've had any experience yourself of having to do virtual clinics or anything.
Yeah, I think what Rebecca said on that's very interesting. From the ALP point of view, and I think this is kind of representative of how things are shifting. We started off with a virtual clinic, but the word virtual has kind of fallen out of parlance now, and it is just the law clinic. And I think we're probably better equipped now, kind of just I mean really the legal sector as a whole, but that extends to pro bono as well, to help people regardless of their circumstances. I think just looking back perhaps to the past, it was not infrequent at all that clients would prefer to meet remotely, and that tended to be at the other end of a crackly landline, and it wasn't great, and there wasn't no camera, no kind of human contact in a way. And I think we're much better provisioned now to handle that kind of thing and to help people whatever they're going through. So I think that's the legal industry as a whole is going to move in that direction, and I think pro bono will as well. I think doing whatever we can to do what can be done online is probably worthwhile, because it frees up resources and people's in-person time to be spent where it's most useful. I think it's great, for example, that we're having this conference in the middle of the day online here. I'm not necessarily sure something like this would have been as easy to organize pre-COVID. So I think that's possibly an indication in things to come. I think too, training delivery online is a really big thing, and that's something we've been looking at with pro bono skills. We can free up lawyers' time using the technology that's sort of come to the fore throughout the pandemic to enable people to do more effectively. So I think that's going to be a theme as well. But yeah, I do think it's important that we remember sort of our roots in terms of the in-person stuff, and I think it's important to make sure that we've always got that option available to people who would prefer it. So yeah, I mean that's my thoughts.
Thanks, Jonathan. There is a kind of question that I've had in advance of our discussion, which was kind of feeds into this and feeds into something that I was going to ask as well. But what this person said is there is the worry that with the rise of technologies that people would cease to interact with each other. Do you not think this would significantly affect pro bono work as well if people if people cease to engage with the community. And I think that's probably kind of tied to the kind of social mobility piece, those who don't have access to a computer. And you touched there about, the importance of keeping the in-person clinics and as well. And I think that is super important. Have you got any thoughts on that or anything to add to that?
I mean, yeah, I think perhaps, the paradigm has shifted in the sense that beforehand we were having to think very carefully about helping people that couldn't turn up to an in-person meeting or whatever. But I think the focus just needs to be on ensuring that we do continue to offer, stuff in person, and we continue to communicate with people. And it almost feels silly having to say that, it's testament quite, to quite the extent things have changed. But I think, yeah, we all just need to be mindful of the fact that we are often helping people who would much rather sit down with you, without any barriers to entry, whether that's working Zoom, whether it's emailing, whatever it is. So yeah, I think it's just being mindful of that, and actually making a point of interacting with each other like normal humans, which really does feel like an odd thing to say, but I think that's just a big pandemic lesson probably for us all.
Absolutely. Ryan, I'll come to you next, conscious that I've not heard from you yet on your views on the future landscape, and have things changed in terms of the way you've been doing pro bono during this strange time?
Yeah, I think as Rebecca introduced and Jonathan's developed, it's part of a broader theme, really, isn't it? There's an emphasis now in the provision of all legal services on efficiency, trying to do things as efficiently as you can, and that to me is a good thing. And particularly in the pro bono space, where you are effectively fighting a fire, and there's only a limited amount of resource available, and the more that can be spread to help the greater number of people, the better. But the caveat there is Jonathan's point. It's the horses for courses element. Some people distrust technology. Some people need to meet you, shake your hand, look you in the eye properly, and see that you're the person that they can trust with their dispute, that you respect them, that they trust you. And that can't often be done over through technology in and of itself. I think it can be built upon through technology, but initial meetings and sometimes just have to be done in person. So I think we'll see more and more technology being used. I think that's an excellent thing. I think the vast majority of people are very comfortable with it, some more comfortable than actually meeting in person. I think that may also be a symptom of the pandemic. And it's just a case of being adaptable, not having a one-size-fits-all approach, which I think is consistent with what all the clinics do anyway. So yeah, I think it's a good thing.
Thank you very much. So we've kind of touched on how people can get involved, how things are shaping up in the future. I wanted to ask as well, what help is there out there for people who already, or people who are planning on undertaking pro bono work? I know a bit about pro bono skills, but how does that feature and help people who are undertaking pro bono work? Ryan, I'll come back to you for that one.
Sure. So PBS, that was our sort of lockdown project. Really, I saved quite a lot of time on traveling. I'm normally always on planes or trains, and so I thought I'd make some use of that downtime and managed to convince Jonathan to join me on that endeavour. Jonathan, by the way, is much too modest to mention, but he is one of these amazing people who both has a legal brain and a technological brain. He's an exceptionally impressive young lawyer who I got involved and thought of immediately to help me with this platform. And the idea was relatively simple. Over the years, I've delivered training for clinics. I've also been recipients of pro bono training. And there's a heck of a lot of inefficiency, to pick up on the point of my previous answer, in the sense that most of the clinics are teaching very similar skills in very similar ways. And so it occurred to me that there was a real opportunity there to put a lot of that stuff online that students can self-learn, used to doing that anyway, and that clinic time and resource could be freed up so that their lawyers, their supervising academics, their staff could help build upon those skills and effectively develop them into more masterclass-esque sessions, as opposed to focusing on the core competencies. But I felt and was fairly confident the generosity of the profession would be happy to help deliver. So we started it, as I say, in lockdown, and I haven't been disappointed. We built a platform that Jonathan's been at the fore of, with a wider team that we've assembled. I won't mention all their names because we'll be here for quite a while, but we've assembled quite a team from a variety of backgrounds, representing all the Scottish universities, also representing a number of law firms, and representing the profession in many respects. It's a really dynamic team, all collaborating, working together. As Rebecca says, you can do things quickly on your own or with Jonathan, but if you're to do it sustainably, then you really need to bring a lot more people with you, and that's when you can create something fairly special. And I think we are creating something fairly special through the work of all these individuals. It's quite a nice environment. So in addition to the training videos, we have plans and we have events provisionally booked that will bring some of this stuff offline as well. So we will, horses for courses, initial training is online, and then we'll team up with practitioners, advocates, barristers, etc., to bring some of these classes to life for students in locations where they can network, but also get real input, tailored input on their individual skills. So things like cross-examination and like, you can learn so much from a video, but you really have to practice it. Then you have to be recorded doing it, and then you have to be slightly mortified as you watch yourself back and realize all the tics that you have during the course of the cross-examination. But that's where you really learn, and that's what we hope students achieve. So slightly biased, but I think it's really quite a valuable resource, and I know I speak on behalf of the whole team delivering it when I say that we are proud of it. And those of you that are students, please do sign up to it. And if you're, another theme of today, if you're keen to become involved in that, then tell us, become involved. There's plenty of space at the table. There's lots to be done, and we'd be delighted to have you. So that's by way of intro. I'm not sure, Jonathan, if you want to add anything on that. I mean, don't bore people with all the tech stuff. You get carried away with that sometimes. But no, it is. It's very, very impressive, some of the tech stuff that Jonathan's been at the fore of developing for us. So, Jonathan, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Oh, I will take that coded warning and confine myself to silence. No, I just echo what Ryan said on that. Really, I think it's also, if you are at a firm and you're not involved in pro bono work, it's a really good thing to flag to your firm. I think, generally speaking, if you say I want to get involved in pro bono work, someone typically thinks of you getting involved in a case that might drag on or whatever. But with a platform like PBS, you really can just sit in your study and record a 20-minute training video that will be viewed by many people and will make a real difference. So yeah, that's I haven't mentioned a single technical thing, Ryan, so I expect a gold star for this, but yeah, no, that's really the story there. I think it's been quite a lot of work getting it together, but it's a resource that we hope's here to stay.
The team will not believe, Jonathan, that you didn't mention anything technical. But the other thing I should add as well is testament again to generosity of the profession. Those in it, we have attracted Queen Samaras, as I call her, the Queen of Pro Bono in Scotland, as one of our patrons. In addition, we've also got Roddy Dunlop QC, who's Dean of Faculty, and also Frances McMenamin QC, who is the senior female QC at the bar and renowned as being one of, if not the most formidable criminal practitioners of our generation. So it's a real honour for us to have attracted their support. And it just shows that, right to the top of the Scottish legal profession, there is this real desire and belief in young people affecting change and in the importance of pro bono. And testament to that is the three of them giving this their time, and they do give it their time, which is, exceptional. We're very, very grateful and humbled by that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan. Rebecca, have you got any final thoughts?
I'm scared to add to that. I'm stunned into silence from that, Ryan. Thank you very much. Certainly Yeah, well, we'll see. I do want to touch on the video, just as an aside. It takes longer than 20 minutes to record a 20-minute video. It took me, no, I won't tell you how long, but the tapes are incredible. And anyway, go back to that. No, so on a serious note, when it comes to pro bono skills, I was approached by Ryan, how long ago now was it? When usually when Ryan gets in touch with a little message and has an idea, you know it's going to be something really innovative and really, really good. And that's what it has turned into. And it's very impressive, the platform. I will, because I'm going to put different heads on, there are, law clinics can teach so much, as you say. And we always look for resources from different areas to support and enhance the training that we do. Pro bono skills is obviously very, very focused on our law clinics and the training that we do, certainly in our Scottish law clinics. I know you're extending south of the border, but that's because we really didn't have anything else either. And still don't. We use sometimes resources from LawWorks or from others, but they are because they are set up in England and Wales, a lot of the resources there are specific, the substantive legal areas specifically are for England and Wales. But Pro Bono Skills has brought something very Scottish. Is that the right way to put it? I don't know if I should be putting it that way, but for our Scottish law clinics, it has brought a sense of community, I think, also for all law students to become involved in. Obviously, we always refer to other resources for those who have joined up, and we say, please do join up. Join everything you can possibly find. There are resources everywhere. YouTube, all sorts. You have the Network for Justice, part of the Access to Justice Foundation. Join it. Resources and all sorts of things are posted there. Get in touch with Clio. I'm going to make a plug for Clio. Now, this is a clinical legal education organisation which is mainly for law clinics around the UK, and mainly the people who run them. But more and more students are getting involved. And through them, we also find out what it is you are looking for as students or as young lawyers involved in pro bono work. And we do have a Law Society of Scotland. And I mentioned them deliberately because I saw somebody from the Law Society of Scotland on this call recently. And they also run outreach training, certainly in the area of street law. And they will put you in touch with different clinics if you get in touch with them as well. We're trying to encourage them to collaborate more as well throughout. So all in all, there are different resources, but hey, I'm going to focus on probonoskills.com basically because it's utterly brilliant. And it's not because he's just called me the Queen of Pro Bono. It really is a great resource, and it's going to grow, and it's there for all law students who are involved and anyone who wants to feed into it. And there's a way to do pro bono. Make a video on your particular area of expertise that can go out to law students. Just to add to that.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Well, just conscious of the time, I won't ask.
Oh, frozen.
Ask Enika for joining us and for giving us their input and insight. I hope everyone found it as interesting as I did, and that today's discussion has inspired you to go and undertake pro bono work if you do not do so already. So thank you once again, and thanks everyone for joining today.